Today we will review how to take this little onion, and you see how there's all these sprouts because I'm horrible at using them up in a timely fashion. We will prep this so that it can be planted outside in the garden. Here you can see I prepped by starting one slit, and I will slowly unwrap the outside of the onion. Typically with this amount of growth, you'll see the onion is no longer edible or usable. But here you see it's kind of decent. It's not rotting or going bad, so I might actually save some of this. It's almost like a turtleneck at the top here, and you want to just keep peeling from there until you get a little bit further. So off to the right are scraps that I'll use to make a vegetable stock, but coming back here you can kind of see how there's still more turtleneck to remove. But there's these separate plants that you're able to kind of identify here. Beautiful. So here you can see I actually have about 4 different onions, maybe more, that I can plant in the garden. So the next step is to gently break these apart. Now that I have these 3 taken apart, I'll continue going down because it looks like there's more kind of scarfs, if you will. And we may be able to separate these even further. Let's see. You can kind of see I took it all the way down, and I actually don't like doing this. I prefer keeping a little purple, just so you can see that you did indeed plant a purple onion. It's a little bit nicer when they start coming up out of the ground. When you do plant these, it's a little intuitive. You plant just up to about here so that you have the greens coming out. And I will show you what happens after a little while, because I had one that kind of prematurely came to fruition. And you can kind of see along here, I just cut off the extra root part at the bottom. A different video that I watched said that the root part is not necessary. You don't kind of need to keep that. However, I did, and all mine in the garden are growing great, so I'm just going to leave them on. Here we have a small, kind of ugly, but totally edible onion that I grew from something like this. We're not quite ready to plant yet. We have a thunderstorm right now. I recommend just grabbing, an old jam jar that someone gave you and fill it just a little bit. This is probably a little too much water. I'll pour some out. Just make sure the very bottom is covered and let them sit in the water until you're ready to plant. That may even have them start roots before you even put them in the ground, which is a technique many gardeners prefer and recommend, but I'm too lazy, so I don't care. Normally I'll just do this, put it right in the dirt, and they will go wild. Here's another onion that I'm going to prep, and you can kind of see this one's a little bit more creative, so we might have a little bit more interesting of an underlayer as we proceed. Like a surgeon, you will gently slice into the onion so you can start at the turtleneck and peel back those layers. And this is like the last one where you may be lucky like me in that outside, there are a few layers, it actually looks pretty good and it's pretty firm. I'm going to keep that. I'm going to make a vegetable stock with it, and I'm thinking that's going to be so delicious, so useful, and one less thing to throw out. Granted, none of this is getting thrown out. That's all compost. It'll go back to the dirt and soil and provide nutrients for other plants. And that is our special guest. Here you see we're getting closer, but there's still more of that turtleneck. So while this one has been freed, there's several up here that need to kind of be broken apart. It's not always a pretty process to see it, but there's actually 2 different onions in here. They're turtleneck down here and up here. And so what we need to do is form one more slit and separate these 2. They've already been separated from those others. Here's an example of one that I thought would be fine as is, and then I noticed this is a little tinge to it. It's not looking too healthy. So I'm going to strip it back to get to that healthy inside part and use that for planting. I just made one little incision, and you can see it's very obviously too. Very nice. So we'll keep removing this. To cut these in half. Sometimes they just need a little saw. They won't break apart so easily. So I'm going to trim off that excess point part just because it's kind of useless. And then I think that these, we're actually at 4 now. We started with 3 just because we divided these two. These are about ready to go in the jar until the weather looks up. One day later, and look at those roots. They're ready to go in. Here you can see some of the onions that I planted earlier in the spring are doing great. Especially this one, it's poking right out. You can really see it's got some good growth to it. And I'm probably gonna plant the other one somewhere around here. Here's my slightly very overgrown garden this year. Just rained, so we're ready to weed everything. Cucumbers are just really taking off. In fact, I think we have one. Yep, there it is. That's ready to get harvested. 3 of those are the ones that I just planted, and soon they will grow to be quite large and quite happy. I will say that these ones in the sunshine really do, they are so much happier than the ones that get partial shade. So I recommend the sunniest spot that you have.